Hi, I'm Dr. Jim Porter. I just thought of a topic, and so I thought I'd push record and start talking about it. Today, we're going, oh, by the way, if you want to know anything more about me, look me up online. I'm a mental health counselor in Gainesville, Florida, and you can come and see me if you live around there somewhere. Anyway, what was the topic I thought about? Well, it's intimacy and pseudo-intimacy. I'm really going to talk about pseudo-intimacy and then kind of move into intimacy, but I'm going to commit now to talking about three areas: alcohol and drugs, sex, and what's the last one? Friendships, and this other thing regarding friendships that you'll see when I get there. Let's just start with alcohol and drugs. I thought of this because the song was going through my head called "The Whiskey Isn't Working Anymore." Gosh, that was from the 80s or 90s, or maybe it was from earlier, but it was a country song that I used to like. Well, I want to talk about the whiskey isn't working anymore because the whiskey never worked in the first place. And what I mean by that is whiskey is one of the things that can be categorized as a pseudostressor. So could any mind-altering substance you take, even the ones that are good, can be, not pseudostressor, I'm sorry, a pseudo-intimacy stimulus. Whiskey and other drugs and any other mind-altering substance or anything you put in your body that changes your feelings for the better can be considered pseudo-intimacy stimuli. So that means something you put in and it gives you pseudo-intimacy. Let's talk about alcohol first and drugs in general. The whiskey was never working in the first place because what was really working when you first took your first shot of whiskey and it just felt so good, or beer or Coke or weed even, that super herb that is a cure-all for everything now, also is a pseudo-intimacy trigger. And what happens with it is that it either hides a bad feeling, or it can also give a good feeling. So some of the good feelings that some drugs and other pseudo-intimacy triggers can, some chemicals that can be pumping through your heart, blood, mind, your body, but your brain and your other emotional neurology these are things that are produced by the brain. I'm segueing here to chemicals that are produced by the brain that have to do with intimacy. Dopamine's one. Oxytocin is like the big famous one. That's the one that makes you feel like gaga whenever you see a brand new baby, especially if it's your own brand new baby. If you're not feeling that, you might be using too many pseudo-stressors if you can't get gaga over a baby. Talk to someone about it. Although you also may have a baby, and after a while, I get it, they get tiring. But oxytocin, dopamine, I'm not sure if serotonin's involved in that intimacy, but think of oxytocin as the intimacy hormone and also the intimacy neurotransmitter. So what happens is, apparently, drugs and alcohol also stimulate those in your brain too, so they can give you a good pseudo feeling of intimacy. The other thing they can do is take away that social anxiety that everybody feels to some degree when they're beginning a social interaction, or when they're in a new social interaction, or when they think they make a faux pas in a social interaction. Of course, some people have it more severe than others. So let's say you get your shot of whiskey and you're feeling good. That whiskey has never been working for you to really make you feel good in a way that you can rely on, because after a while you can't get that same high as you got before. And not only that, when you grow up and you don't have that gang of friends that you used to party with, now you're kind of drinking out of nostalgia, trying to get that old feeling back, trying to get the old times back, and you can't do it with that way. So I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with you drinking with buddies or anything. I had a beer with a friend a couple of nights ago. But I think that you shouldn't have a beer with your friend every time you're out together. You should sometimes not have any chemicals in your body when you go out with friends and stuff like that, because what you want to do is experience all the natural feelings that are going to come up, because social emotional arousal, which is what sometimes feels like anxiety, is functional. It's supposed to be there, right? If you have way too much, you can extinguish it by just feeling the way too much until you get more used to the circumstances. If you need help from a therapist or a friend or something else, go ahead and use that. But what I'm saying is pseudo-intimacy stimuli get in the way of your real relationships. And you'll notice this happening. Like, let's say you met your girlfriend or wife while drinking or doing weed or coke or whatever, and you start to notice that things are changing after you've been together for a while. That's because you haven't really gotten true intimacy. So I will mention true intimacy now. True intimacy is when there's no barrier between you two. That means no drug, no hiding place. There's nothing suppressing your emotions. Another problem you might have is you might be an automatic suppressor of emotions, like a lot of men are. Well, actually, a lot of women are too. We just suppress different types of emotions. If you're doing that, you're going to have to learn to get real intimacy by probably going to a psychotherapist or learning how to really get real in very vulnerable, stress-inducing ways with your partner in ways that are not accusatory, but share from right here. When you share from right here, it's going to feel bad at first, but eventually you'll start to get the reward of sharing from in here if your partner is accepting of what's going on in here. Of course, don't blame them if the stuff you bring out is too much. Maybe get a therapist or something to talk about that. Don't blame them in general, because that's not honest sharing. That's finger pointing. Real honest sharing is talking about how you feel in here and what you need. Not necessarily from them, just what you need, okay? And that's really hard to do. Let's move on. Since I mentioned girlfriends, boyfriends, and buddies, let's move on to sex, okay? So sex, I'm going to talk about when you just go get laid to get those feelings of getting laid. Pardon my language. I said get laid. I just said get laid again. That is going to turn out to be problematic behavior, and you're probably watching this video partly because you may have experienced that. After a while, that wonderful feeling of sex that you have the first time comes from just not knowing the person. You have a one-night stand and you decide to turn it into a two-night stand or a three-night stand, or you feel you have reliable sex, so you wind up getting close to that person, and it feels like you're in love, and it feels like the world is open to you, and it feels like that person was sent down from heaven for you to be permanent forever the first few times. But after a while, your normal anxieties and the reality of the various parts of that personality and the reality of your various parts of your personality start to become less easy to hide. And the initial high from all that, the sex you were having, you can't have it from the same thing over and over again. So you're not having real intimacy. You're just getting a high from the sex. So what you need to start doing again is what I said. Share openly and intimately and take big chances. And your relationship will have ups and downs with this kind of sharing. But it's nothing as bad as the slow demise of every relationship you go through. So real intimacy, again, involves emotional vulnerability and things like that. I could say more about that, but I just kind of want to keep on rolling. There's a lot more detail to this. That's why I encourage you to look it up. So let's move on to, or go see a therapist, or just experiment with what I'm talking. Real open sharing. Making requests is also part of open sharing. Honey, I feel really tense and even a little bit angry inside, and I think it's because I need closeness. And I'm wondering if at night we could at least spend like 5 minutes massaging each other or holding each other or sharing feelings like this. That's telling how you feel, describing a need, and then describing and making a request. And a request means they can say yes or no. So again, all this stuff is risky. There are no guarantees except for you're guaranteed to do what you set out to do if you follow through. All right, so now we're going to talk about buddies. Well, I already talked about that. It's that pseudo-intimacy. No. I'm going to talk about something else besides alcohol and sex. And what it is your normal mask you put up. So what is that? What is the normal mask you put up? What you put up is a way of behaving around guys if you're a guy, a way of behaving around girls if you're a girl, women. Let's do this. Let's call you men and women, no matter what age you are. If you're a man, you behave a certain way around other people. You behave a certain way around women, and you behave a certain way around men. The same with women. And if you're non-binary, the same thing goes. You're human too. You're going to be behaving according to some enculturated expectations. And one of the big enculturated expectations is that on the masculine side, you're supposed to be tough or silent and isolated. I don't need nobody. I'm strong enough, okay? And so that's how we behave in front of our friends. So we'll go right out in front of our friends, and whether we're drinking or not, we put up a mask. With women, they're supposed to be very emotional and helpful and socially oriented. So whether they feel like it or not, that's what they might be doing in conversation. Have you ever caught yourself just being the helper all the time and never having someone help you? Or always smiling because you think you have to be supportive? On the guy's side, or either side, but I hear this on the guy's side a lot, I am also someone who's afraid to say no. So you might look like a tough, gruff, mean person, but you're always helping. You can chop down somebody's tree, you can build them a new house, you can fix their dishwasher, but you're never asking for anything in return, and you're never offering anything deeper. And so this is what I'm talking about, pseudo-intimacy among friends. Among friends, too, if they're going to be real friends, you're going to want to eventually share something that's vulnerable. This might be the person you're talking to one day because you have no one else to talk to when somehow a fraudulent person took all the money out of your bank account, and you're going to want to talk to somebody and have somebody that accepts you. This is the person that, let's say you're getting a divorce or you're having trouble in a relationship, that you're going to want to lean on a little bit, and then you want them to hear you non-judgmentally. And all this stuff is very difficult. It gets close to what the scariest part is, because if somebody hears what we have to say in our deepest, most shame-inducing parts, they might run screaming, or they might run laughing. But if they don't, if they listen and they accept without judgment and without trying to automatically fix your problems, but willing to offer suggestions if you're willing to hear them, then this becomes a bond that's a lot more what we human beings evolved to gain. So you can't understand the payoff until you start to get it. And I will admit that for years, I was walking around detached from my emotions. I was a brilliant thinker, and I still am. But now I'm more of a brilliant feeler, and I'm more of a brilliant relator to my wife, to my daughter, even to my clients. And also, action. I'm more likely to take action on something that I think might be a good idea instead of trying to stuff down the feelings by avoiding action. So, do you get the idea of pseudo-intimacy and real intimacy? If you do, please write a comment about what you think I mean, or what you think pseudo-intimacy and real intimacy are. Thank you very much. I have been James Porter, PhD, LMHC in Florida. I thought of a funny thing, like a silly rhyme. I'm Jimmy P. If you want to be happy, be like me. I sort of made part of that up. That nickname's never going to stick. Take care. Bye-bye.